In this video, you're going to deploy the To-Do API to Heroku, so anybody with the URL can access these routes, adding and fetching to-do items. Now, before we can push it to Heroku, there are quite a few things we need to change, small little tweaks to get it ready for the Heroku servers. One of the bigger tweaks is going to be to set up a real MongoDB database, because currently we use a localhost database, and this is not going to be available once we get our app on Heroku. To kick things off, we're going to move into the server file and set up the app to use the environment port variable that Heroku is going to set, which we did in the previous section where we deployed to Heroku. If you remember, what we did is we created a variable called port, and we set that equal to process.env.uppercase_port. This is the variable that may or may not be set. It's going to be set if the app is running on Heroku. It won't be set if it's running locally. We can use our OR syntax to set up a value if port is not defined. This is going to be used on localhost, and we're going to stick with port 3000. If the process env port variable is there, we're going to use it. If it's not, we'll use 3000. Now, we need to swap out 3000 down below with the port, which means our call to app.listen is going to have port passed in, and our string below is going to get switched to a template string, so we can inject the actual port. Right here, I'll use started up at port. Then I'm going to inject the actual port variable into the template string. All right, the port is set up, and now we can move into the package.json file. There's two things we need to tweak in here. First up, we need to tell Heroku how to start the project. This is done via the start script. The start script is the command that Heroku is going to run to start the application. In our case, it's going to be node. Then we're going to go into the server directory, and we're going to run the server.js file. I have a comma at the end, and we are good to go with the start script. The next thing we need to do is tell Heroku which version of Node we want to use. The default version currently is a v5 version of Node, and that's going to cause some problems because we take advantage of a lot of ES6 features in this project, and those are available in v6 of Node. In order to figure out exactly what version of Node you're using, you can run node v from the terminal. Here I'm using 6.2.2. If you're using a different v6 version, that is perfectly fine. Over inside of package.json, we're going to tell Heroku to use the same version we're using here. This gets done by setting up an engines property. Engines lets us specify various versions for things that Heroku lets us configure. One of these is Node. The property name will be Node, and the value is going to be the version of Node to use, 6.2.2. Awesome. Now our package.json file is ready for Heroku. Heroku knows how to start the app, and it knows exactly which version of Node we want to use, so we won't get any weird errors when we deploy. With package.json out of the way, the last thing we need to do is set up a database. And we're going to do this with a Heroku add-on. Now, if you go to Heroku's website and click on any of your apps, we haven't created one for this one, so click on an app from the previous section. I'm going to go ahead and click on one of mine. You're going to see a little dashboard where you can do quite a few things. Right here, you can see there's an installed add-ons section, but what we really want is to configure our add-ons. When you configure your add-ons, you're able to add all sorts of really cool tools that come built into Heroku. Now, not all of these are free, but most of them have a good free plan. You can see we have various database related items. Down below, we have data store utilities, we have monitoring tools, a lot of really cool stuff. What we're going to be using is an add-on called mLab. This is a MongoDB database service. It has a great free plan, and it's going to let us integrate MongoDB with our Heroku application. Now, you don't actually need to do anything from the website. We're going to do everything from the terminal. I just want to make you aware of exactly where this lives. Down below, you can see they do have a free sandbox plan, and they have plans that go all the way up to $5,000 a month. We're going to be sticking with a $0 plan, though. Everything in this course is free. In order to get set up over inside of the terminal, we're going to create a new Heroku app because currently we don't have one. Heroku create is the command to get that done. Once the application has been created, we need to tell the app that we want to use mLab, which is short for Mongo Lab. In order to add this add-on, we're going to run the following command. Heroku add-ons :create. Now the add-on is Mongo Lab. And after the colon, we're going to specify the plan we want to use. We're going to use that sandbox plan, which is free. When we run this command, it's going to configure mlab with our Heroku application, and we are good to go. Now, if you run the Heroku config command, you can actually get a list of all the configuration variables for your Heroku application. Right now, we just have one. It's a MongoDB URI. This is the database URL that mlab gave us. This is the one we need to connect to. It's the only one available for our app. Now, this MongoDB URI variable, this is actually on process.env when the app runs on Heroku, which means we can use a similar technique to what we did right here inside of our mongoose.js file. Inside of mongoose.js, right here in our call to connect, we can check if process.env.uppercase mongodb_URI exists. If it does, we're going to use it. If it doesn't, after our OR statement, we are going to use the localhost URL. And this is going to make sure that our Heroku app connects to the actual database, because connecting to localhost will fail, causing the app to crash. With this in place, we are now ready to get things going. Over inside of the terminal, I'm going to run git status to check our changed files. We have 3. Everything looks good. I can run git commit with the AM flag. This is going to let us specify our commit message. Set up app for Heroku. I'm going to make the commit and push it up to GitHub. Now we need to push our application to Heroku. I'm going to do that using git push Heroku master. Remember, when you create a Heroku application, it automatically adds that Heroku remote. And here we're pushing it to the master branch. The master branch is the only branch Heroku is actually going to do anything with. The application is getting pushed up. It should be ready in just a few seconds. Once it's done, we can open up the URL in the browser and see exactly what we get. Now, another command I want to talk about for just a moment is a command called Heroku logs. Heroku logs shows you the server logs for your application. If anything goes wrong, you can usually get an error message inside of here. So if you have a problem deploying in this section and you're going to ask a question on Udemy, please run the Heroku logs command, copy the output and paste it into your question. This will let me answer your question right away. Now, as you can see, we have our started up at port 41906 message printing at the bottom, which is great. Your port is going to be different. As long as you have this message, everything should be good to go. I am going to run Heroku open or copy the URL up above. You can see it right here. This is going to open up the application in my browser. I'm going to choose to copy the URL. I'll move into Chrome and I can visit it. Now, visiting the root of the app should do nothing because we haven't set up a root URL. But if we go to /todos, we should get our to-dos JSON coming back. Here you can see we have an empty array, which is expected because we haven't added any to-do items. So let's go ahead and do that. What I want to do is grab this URL and head over to Postman. Inside of Postman, we're going to make a few calls. I'm going to create a post to-dos request. All I need to do is take the URL here and swap it out with the one I just copied. Then I can send off the request because the body data is already configured. I'm going to send that off. And down below, what do we get? We get our to-do item, and this is not coming from our local machine. This is coming from our Heroku application that is talking to our Mongo Lab MongoDB database. Now, all the other commands should also work. I'm going to go to get to-dos, paste in the URL, and we should be able to get all of our to-do items. I'm also going to check what happens when I try to fetch an individual to-do. Right here, I'll copy the ID, add it on to the URL, and send off that request. And what do I get? I get the individual to-do item. So no matter which call we use, everything is working as expected, and this is fantastic. Our application is now running on Heroku with a real production database. That is it for this one. Now that we're up on Heroku, in the next video, I'm going to show you a few tweaks and tricks we can use inside of Postman to make switching between our local environment and our Heroku environment much, much easier. That's coming up next, so stay tuned. I will see you then.